The past behind the family brand. Funny Mike's entire empire was built on laughter, family moments, wild challenges, and millions of young fans watching his every move. But long before the polished videos, the television appearances, and the massive subscriber count, MacArthur Johnson was connected to a case so serious that it could have erased his future before his real career even began. The image most viewers recognize today is a father, comedian, entertainer, and businessman. The image investigators saw years earlier was completely different. There was a young rapper, a deadly confrontation, conflicting statements, surveillance footage, a recovered weapon, and a second-degree murder charge that would follow his name long after the courtroom process stopped moving. That contrast is what makes this story impossible to ignore. How did a teenager facing one of the most serious accusations imaginable later become one of the biggest family creators on YouTube? How did a case involving the death of a 20-year-old man disappear into legal uncertainty while the person accused went on to build an entertainment empire? And why did the internet suddenly drag the entire story back into the spotlight nearly a decade later? To understand what really happened, we have to separate three different versions of the same man: Funny Mike, the family entertainer; 22 Savage, the controversial rapper; and MacArthur Johnson, the 19-year-old sitting at the center of a homicide investigation in Baker, Louisiana. This is not a story where every question received an answer. It is a story about fame, reinvention, tragedy, viral misinformation, and a legal outcome that left both supporters and critics arguing over what justice actually looked like. Before we go deeper, tell us where you are watching from. Subscribe to the channel so you do not miss the next chapter. Comment. 1. If you believe a person's past should always remain part of their public story. Or comment 2. If you believe people should be judged mainly by what they do after changing their lives. Before Funny Mike became famous, MacArthur Johnson was born and raised in the Baton Rouge area, surrounded by a culture where music, comedy, ambition, and street pressure often existed side by side. From an early age, he understood two things extremely well: how to make people laugh and how to make people pay attention. His first major opening came through short-form comedy. Before TikTok dominated phone screens, Vine gave creators only a few seconds to deliver something funny, shocking, or memorable. Johnson used that limited space perfectly. His comedy felt loud, direct, unpredictable, and connected to the people around him. He was not trying to look polished, he was trying to feel real. As his audience grew, he used different names, including Mighty Mike and Funny Ass Mike. His style was chaotic, raw, and built around the type of energy that made viewers share clips with their friends. When Vine began fading, many creators disappeared with it. Johnson did not. He shifted toward YouTube, where longer videos allowed him to build not just viral moments, but an entire personality. Pranks, challenges, skits, arguments, family moments, and high-energy vlogs became the foundation of his channel. The formula worked. Millions of viewers began treating his uploads like episodes of an ongoing reality show. His audience grew younger, more loyal, and more invested in the people around him. Eventually, the Funny Mike channel climbed past 14 million subscribers. That number placed him among the most visible Black creators on the platform and made him one of the most recognizable entertainers to emerge from Louisiana's digital scene. He later appeared on Wild 'N Out, competing in comedy games and freestyle battles. He also appeared in I Got the Hook Up 2 alongside Master P. From the outside, the rise looked almost perfectly designed. A local comedian had transformed internet attention into television, film, music, and business success. But his journey did not begin with family-friendly entertainment. Before Funny Mike became a brand, Johnson was chasing fame through controversy, rap rivalries, and an identity that carried a much darker image. The birth of 22 Savage. In 2016, MacArthur Johnson was not primarily known as a YouTube father or comedy star. He was attempting to build a rap career under the name 22 Savage. The name was intentionally provocative. At the time, 21 Savage was rising rapidly through Atlanta's rap scene, especially after the success of Savage Mode. Johnson created 22 Savage as a direct challenge. The entire idea was designed to make people stop, argue, laugh, criticize, and click. He claimed to be more dangerous, more entertaining, and better than the rapper whose identity he was parodying. He released diss tracks, copied elements of the branding, and treated controversy as free promotion. Critics accused him of stealing another artist's image. Supporters viewed the persona as comedy mixed with music. Either way, people talked about him, and attention was exactly what he wanted. His early releases received mixed reactions. Some listeners dismissed the songs as a joke, while others became interested enough to keep watching. Tracks such as Jumpin' helped the 22 Savage character develop an audience beyond a single viral comparison. He released music projects and pushed the persona aggressively, knowing that every argument about whether he was serious only increased his visibility. Eventually, Johnson changed the name to Young 22, an attempt to keep the audience while escaping the shadow of the original controversy. Over time, however, the rap identity began disappearing. Comedy was reaching more people. YouTube offered greater opportunity. The Funny Mike persona could attract families, advertisers, younger viewers, and mainstream entertainment companies in ways that 22 Savage never could. By 2018, the transition was nearly complete. The aggressive rapper persona had been replaced by a comedian whose content centered on entertainment and family life. But between those identities, one event occurred that could have ended both versions of his future. Before the subscriber milestones, before the television appearances, and before the family channel, there was a confrontation in Baker, Louisiana. What began as a neighborhood dispute would leave one young man dead, several people arrested, and Johnson facing charges that carried life-changing consequences. The dispute that would not disappear. The conflict reportedly began weeks before the fatal encounter, and the alleged cause sounded almost too small to produce such devastating consequences. According to the account presented through police reporting and court-related records, the original tension involved promotional material for a birthday party. The exact words exchanged during that earlier disagreement remained unclear. What mattered was that the anger did not disappear when the argument ended. It stayed alive. Weeks passed, but resentment remained between people connected to the dispute. Then, on the night of the 3rd of May 2016, that unresolved tension returned in the worst possible way. Richard Devin Phillips was 20 years old. People who knew him described him as an aspiring rapper with plans and ambitions of his own. He was not simply a name in a police file. He was a young man whose family and friends expected him to have more time. That night, Phillips and his friend Walter Williams Jr. were walking near the intersection of West Azalea Avenue and Baker Boulevard. At approximately 10 o'clock, a vehicle pulled alongside them. MacArthur Johnson was reportedly sitting in the front passenger seat. Charmaine Wilson was behind the wheel. Words were exchanged between the people inside the vehicle and the two young men outside. At first, Phillips and Williams moved away. The interaction could have ended there. The vehicle could have continued down the street. Both sides could have carried their anger home. But according to Williams' later account, Phillips remained disturbed by what had been said. He decided to return to the vehicle and confront Johnson again. That decision became the final turning point. What happened during the next moments would later be described differently by witnesses, Johnson, and investigators. One side would claim that Phillips approached in a threatening manner. Another account would say that the danger came from inside the car. The entire criminal case would eventually depend on which version the evidence supported. Seconds later, shots were fired. The parking lot shooting. According to the witness account given by Walter Williams Jr., Johnson fired from the front passenger side of the vehicle when Phillips approached again. Phillips was struck in the chest, turning a neighborhood confrontation into a homicide investigation almost instant. The scene became chaotic. Phillips and Williams moved away from the vehicle while police and emergency responders were called. When officers arrived, Phillips was still alive. He was transported to a hospital with serious injury. There was still hope when he left the scene. That hope did not last. Less than 24 hours later, Richard Devin Phillips died. He was 20 years old. The original dispute had reportedly begun over something connected to a birthday celebration. By the time it ended, a family had lost a son, a friend group had lost someone they cared about, and several young lives had been pulled into the criminal justice system. Investigators quickly began tracing the vehicle and the people inside it. Police located the car and reportedly observed damage around the front passenger window that they considered consistent with shots being fired from inside the vehicle. That physical detail mattered because it appeared to support the claim that the gunfire came from Johnson's position. Investigators also recovered a suspected weapon from another location. Police believed it had been moved or hidden after the shooting. That discovery created another major issue for the defense narrative. Even when someone claims self-defense, investigators carefully examine what happened afterward. Leaving the scene, changing accounts, moving evidence, or hiding a weapon can influence how police interpret a person's intentions. Johnson admitted that he had fired the weapon, but he did not describe the shooting as murder. He told investigators that he acted because he believed Phillips was armed and threatening his life. From that moment forward, the case was no longer about identifying who pulled the trigger. It became a fight over justification. Was Johnson reacting to an immediate threat, or was the self-defense claim created after the shooting to protect him from prosecution? The answer appeared to be captured by something nobody involved could talk over: surveillance video. The camera that changed the case. Johnson's self-defense claim depended on one central allegation. Richard Phillips approached the vehicle with a weapon and created an immediate threat. Investigators, however, reportedly had surveillance footage of the confrontation. Unlike witness memories, video does not become nervous during questioning. It does not fear arrest. It does not change its statement after being confronted with evidence. It simply records what appears in front of the camera. Police officials said the footage did not support the claim that Phillips approached the vehicle while visibly threatening Johnson with a gun. That contradiction became one of the most important parts of the investigation. The driver's statements also became a problem. According to the police account, Charmaine Wilson initially supported the suggestion that Phillips had been armed. But after investigators presented the surveillance evidence and other findings, Wilson reportedly changed his statement and said he had not seen Phillips carrying a gun. The shared self-defense story appeared to be weakening. However, the evidence was not entirely simple. Walter Williams Jr. had also told police that he was unarmed. A separate witness reportedly said Williams fled with a handgun, and investigators later recovered a hidden firearm connected to him. Because his original statement conflicted with what police claimed to have discovered, Williams was charged with obstruction of justice. Now the case contains several competing truths. Johnson admitted firing the shot but claimed self-defense. Police said the video did not support his account. Wilson reportedly changed his statement. Williams was accused of lying about his own weapon. A suspected firearm connected to the shooting had been recovered away from the scene. Every person appeared to be protecting something. 3 individuals became entangled in the investigation, but MacArthur Johnson faced the most serious consequences. Police charged him with second-degree murder, illegal use of a weapon, and obstruction of justice. His bond was reportedly set at $370,000. On paper, the case looked like it was moving toward a major criminal trial. Instead, it entered a legal process that would leave the public with more questions than answers. The decision behind closed doors. Being arrested and charged is not the same as being convicted. That distinction is essential to understanding what happened next. The prosecution of a serious felony requires more than a police accusation. Prosecutors must establish that sufficient evidence exists to move the case forward. In Johnson's case, the evidence was eventually presented through the grand jury process. A grand jury does not determine guilt in the way a trial jury does. Its role is to decide whether the evidence justifies a formal indictment and continued prosecution. The process is secret. The public usually does not hear the full testimony, see every exhibit, or know which arguments influence the final decision. That secrecy became critical in this case because the grand jury did not return an indictment against Johnson. Court records reportedly described the matter as pretermitted, meaning the grand jury declined to take action at that time. The case did not proceed to trial. Johnson was not convicted, but he was also not publicly cleared through an acquittal after a full courtroom proceeding. The legal system stopped short of giving either side the final answer many people expected. For Johnson, the practical result was freedom from prosecution in the case. He did not serve prison time for Phillips's death, and his career continued. For Phillips's family, the outcome meant there was no trial where witnesses could be examined publicly. Evidence could be challenged in open court, and a jury could issue a verdict. That gap became the permanent shadow over the story. Supporters could accurately say that Johnson was never convicted. Critics could accurately say that Phillips died after Johnson admitted firing the weapon. Both statements could exist at the same time, which allowed the story to remain emotionally explosive. The grand jury's reasoning was not publicly revealed. People outside the room could speculate about witness credibility, self-defense, evidentiary weaknesses, or prosecutorial strategy, but speculation could not replace the missing record. Johnson walked away without a conviction. Then he made the most important transformation of his public life, from controversial rapper to family superstar. After the case stopped moving toward trial, Johnson gradually abandoned the identity that had defined his rap career. 22 Savage represented confrontation, imitation, diss records, and street controversy. Funny Mike offered something much larger: comedy, family, television opportunities, sponsorships, and an audience that could grow across generations. The pivot worked better than almost anyone could have predicted. Johnson built his content around pranks, challenges, skits, friendships, relationships, and eventually his children. His life became a public show, but the tone was completely different from the music persona he had once promoted. With Jaliyah and their family appearing regularly, viewers became emotionally attached to the household. Children watched the videos. Parents recognized the brand. New subscribers often discovered Funny Mike without knowing anything about 22 Savage or the Baker investigation. His visibility expanded beyond YouTube. Wild 'N Out introduced him to television audiences. Film appearances gave him mainstream credibility. Music remained part of his identity, but comedy and family entertainment became the center of the business. The transformation was so complete that the two versions of MacArthur Johnson seemed almost unrelated. One version was connected to a 2016 homicide investigation. The other was filming bright thumbnails, comedy skits, family competitions, and viral challenges for millions of fans. Success did not erase the past, but it buried it beneath an enormous amount of new content. Every upload pushed the old news further down search results. Every new fan entered the story at a later point. The public identity of Funny Mike became stronger than the memory of the case. For years, that strategy appeared to work. But the internet never truly forgets. Old mugshots remain searchable. Archived news reports stay online. Short clips lose their dates when they are reposted. A dramatic headline from years ago can suddenly appear fresh to an audience that has never seen it before. Eventually, the past returned not because of a new confirmed arrest, but because social media learned how profitable the old story could still be when an old case became new again. Nearly a decade after the original case, social media users began circulating claims suggesting that Funny Mike had been arrested in a new murder investigation. Old mugshots were reposted without dates. Archived news footage was edited into short videos. Captions framed the information as breaking news. To viewers who knew Funny Mike only as a family entertainer, the claims felt shocking enough to be believable. That was exactly why they spread. The posts used pieces of real history to support a misleading new narrative. Johnson had been arrested in connection with a homicide case in 2016. He had faced a second-degree murder charge. A young man had died. Those facts gave the false updates enough authenticity to travel quickly. But according to the source narrative, there was no verified new murder arrest in 2026. No credible law enforcement announcement established that Funny Mike had recently turned himself in for a new gas station incident. The viral framing relied on old material presented as current. This is how misinformation becomes powerful. A completely invented story is often easy to reject. A false story built around genuine photographs, real names, and documented history is much harder to identify. Millions of people saw the headline before they saw the correction. Some became convinced that Funny Mike's career was ending in real time. Others attacked his supporters for defending him. Longtime fans tried to explain that the mugshot was old, and the case had not produced an indictment. But the correction moved more slowly than the accusation. Algorithms reward emotional reactions. Shock creates comments. Anger creates shares. Confusion keeps viewers watching. A careful explanation of grand jury procedure cannot compete easily with a headline claiming that a famous YouTuber was just arrested for murder. The result was a collision between three timelines. The young rapper connected to a fatal 2016 confrontation, the family entertainer who built an enormous career afterward, and the viral version of Funny Mike, created by people repackaging the past as breaking news. By the time the truth caught up, the damage had already spread. New audiences had formed opinions based on a timeline that never happened. And that may be the most unsettling part of the entire story. On the modern internet, the past does not need to repeat itself to destroy someone's reputation. It only needs to be reposted without context, fame, truth, and the cost of a second chance. Funny Mike's story is bigger than one arrest, one viral headline, or one dramatic transformation. It is a warning about how quickly a life can change when anger, pride, and public attention collide. A few minutes in 2016 created consequences that followed multiple families for years. Richard Devon Phillips lost his future. His loved ones were left with grief and unanswered questions. MacArthur Johnson survived the legal process without a conviction, but the case became a permanent part of his public identity. Strategically, Johnson's greatest career decision was his reinvention. He recognized that controversy could create attention, but it could not build the stable future he wanted. By leaving the 22 Savage persona behind and focusing on comedy, family, and entertainment, he created a brand capable of reaching millions. That transformation shows that people can change direction, build something positive, and refuse to remain trapped inside the worst chapter of their past. But reinvention does not erase responsibility, and fame does not rewrite history. The most important lesson is that success and accountability must exist together. A person may grow, become a parent, inspire others, and create opportunities, while still acknowledging that another family continues to carry pain. The second lesson concerns misinformation. Before sharing shocking news, viewers should check the date, source, and legal outcome. An old mugshot does not prove a new arrest. A viral caption is not a police report, and being charged is not the same as being convicted. When people spread false claims, they do not create justice. They create confusion and turn real tragedy into entertainment. The most humane response is not to celebrate anyone's downfall or ignore anyone's loss. It is to demand truth, encourage peaceful conflict resolution, and remember that pride can turn a small disagreement into irreversible damage. No argument, online rivalry, party dispute, or reputation is worth a human life. What do you think this story teaches about fame, accountability, and second chances? Comment 1 if you believe people can truly change, or comment 2 if you believe some events should follow a public figure forever. Subscribe, like, and share this video with someone who needs to understand the difference between a viral story and the full truth.